My name is Jordan. I am 12 years old, and last spring my dad dropped me off at my grandma's house with a duffel bag and a promise he would be back Sunday night. Just a quick work trip, he said, already backing toward his car. Grandma's going to spoil you rotten. I'll be back before you know it. He hugged me fast, the kind of hug where you can tell the person is already thinking about something else. Then he drove away without looking back. That was 94 days ago. I counted every single one. I marked them on a calendar Grandma kept on the kitchen wall. Red X's that started as hopeful countdowns and turned into something else entirely. A record. Proof. Evidence that time was passing and he wasn't coming back. At first, I believed him. I unpacked my weekend bag, played cards with Grandma, ate her famous mac and cheese, and waited for Sunday night. I even picked out what I would wear for the drive home, a hoodie my dad had bought me on our last trip to the mall, back when he still showed up for things like that. When Sunday came and went without a call, I told myself his flight got delayed. Airlines were always messing things up. That's what I heard adults say all the time. When Monday passed, I figured work must have kept him late. He was always talking about deadlines and projects and bosses who didn't understand. By Wednesday, I started checking my phone every 10 minutes, watching for a text that never came. I even tried calling him twice, but it went straight to voicemail both times. His voice on the recording sounded happy, confident, like a person who would never leave his kid behind. By week 2, Grandma stopped pretending everything was fine. She would disappear into the kitchen to make phone calls, her voice tight and low, like she was trying to hold something heavy without dropping it. I would sit in the living room with the TV on mute, listening to fragments of conversations that made my stomach twist. He's not answering. I don't know what to tell the boy. This isn't right, Michael. You can't just leave him here without a plan. I sat in the guest room that was slowly becoming my room and stared at the ceiling. The walls were covered in old photos of my dad when he was my age, smiling, happy, standing next to Grandma like she was the center of his world. I wondered when he stopped seeing people that way. On day 21, I started writing things down. A notebook I found in Grandma's craft drawer became my record. Every day without a call, every text that went unanswered, every excuse I made up in my head and then crossed out when it stopped making sense. Day 21, I wrote. Still no word from Dad. Grandma cried in the bathroom this morning. She thinks I didn't hear, but I did. If my dad ever came back, I wanted him to see exactly what he had done. I wanted the silence to have a shape, a weight, something he could not pretend away. Because when he finally showed up 3 months later, what he found in that house made him whisper, "No, this wasn't supposed to happen like this." Do you want to know how being abandoned at 12 turned into the one decision that made my dad lose everything he took for granted? Stay to the end, and you'll see exactly how I made sure he could never pretend this didn't happen. The first week felt like a vacation gone wrong. Grandma's house was small but warm, tucked into a quiet neighborhood in Ohio, where everyone knew everyone, and the mailman waved every morning like you were old friends. She had lived there for 40 years, ever since Grandpa died when I was just a baby, and she decided she didn't need a bigger place to be lonely in. The house smelled like lavender and old books. Every surface had a doily or a photo frame or a small ceramic animal she had collected over the decades. The refrigerator was covered in magnets from places she had never been, gifts from friends who traveled while she stayed behind, tending her garden and watching game shows. I had visited before, of course. Holidays, summer breaks, the occasional long weekend when Dad needed to handle something. I never asked what he was handling. Kids don't ask questions like that, because they don't want to hear answers that might change things. But those visits always had an end date, a return ticket, a calendar reminder that said, "Pick up Jordan," in my dad's phone. A plan. This time, there was nothing but a duffel bag with 3 days of clothes and a toothbrush that was almost worn out at the bristles. I didn't even have my charger. Dad said he'd bring it on Sunday. Your dad just needs to sort some things out. Grandma said on day 4, setting a plate of chocolate chip cookies in front of me like sugar could fix everything. Her voice was calm, but I saw the way her hands trembled slightly as she poured my milk. Work has been hard on him lately. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. I was 12. I knew about homework and video games and trying to make friends at a new school after the divorce. I didn't know about whatever made a grown man leave his kid with a duffel bag and a lie about the weekend. "When's he coming back?" I asked, cookie untouched on my plate. Grandma's smile flickered like a candle in a draft. "Soon, honey. Soon." Soon turned into a week. A week turned into 2. 2 turned into a month, and somewhere in there, I stopped asking. Not because I stopped caring. God, I cared so much it felt like a physical ache in my chest, like something was pressing down on my ribs every time I thought about it. I stopped asking because I was tired of watching Grandma struggle to find an answer she didn't have. I stopped asking because the look in her eyes when she said soon was getting harder to watch. I stopped asking because silence was easier than hope that kept getting crushed. The thing about being left is that it doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in slowly, like water through a crack in the wall. One day you're fine, convincing yourself this is temporary, and the next you're lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering what you did wrong. I replayed every conversation I could remember. Every argument, every time I talked back, every bad grade I tried to hide. I made a list in my head of all the ways I might have driven him away. Maybe I complained too much about moving to his new apartment after the divorce. I said the walls were too thin, and I could hear the neighbors fighting. Maybe he took that as an insult. Maybe I wasn't grateful enough when he bought me that bike for my birthday. I wanted a different color, but I didn't say anything. Maybe he could tell anyway. Maybe I reminded him too much of Mom, and looking at me hurt in ways I couldn't understand. People always said I had her eyes, her smile. Maybe every time he saw my face, he saw the marriage that fell apart. Maybe I was just too much, too needy, too complicated, too expensive. Maybe being a single dad wasn't what he signed up for, and leaving me with Grandma was his way of opting out. The theories multiplied in the dark. Each one felt possible, each one felt like a knife. The notebook became my therapy. I wrote down the theories, then crossed them out one by one as I talked them through with Grandma or just thought them to death. Day 30. Realized it's not about the bike. Grandma says he did this before I was born too. Disappeared for months when things got hard. When Grandpa was dying, Dad went to California and didn't come back until after the funeral. She says it's who he is, not who I am. She says some people run from hard things because they never learned how to stay. That entry made me cry. Not because it was sad, but because it was the first time I considered that maybe this wasn't my fault. Maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe he was. Grandma found me on the porch that night, tears drying on my face, notebook clutched to my chest like a shield. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just sat down next to me on the creaky porch swing and put her arm around my shoulders. We stayed there until the stars came out, not talking, just existing together in the quiet. The crickets sang. A car drove past, headlights sweeping across the yard. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked at nothing. "You're stronger than he ever was," she said finally, her voice soft but certain. "Don't let him make you think otherwise. This is his failure, Jordan, not yours. Never yours." By week 6, Grandma started making phone calls to people who weren't family. I overheard her talking to someone about the situation, her voice low and urgent in a way I hadn't heard before. She mentioned phrases like, "How long before it becomes official?" And "What are my rights here? And I can't just keep waiting for him to come to his senses." She mentioned words like custody and abandonment and welfare check. I didn't fully understand all of it, but I understood enough to know that my dad had crossed a line. A legal one. The kind that adults drew in the sand and expected other adults to respect. One afternoon, a woman in a gray blazer showed up at the door. She had kind eyes and sensible shoes and a clipboard that made everything feel official. She introduced herself as Miss Patterson from Child Protective Services and asked if she could come in and talk to both of us. Grandma made tea, the chamomile kind she always turned to when things were serious. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook in my lap, feeling like I was about to take a test I hadn't studied for. "Jordan," Miss Patterson said gently, setting down her clipboard and looking at me like I was a person, not a case file. "Can you tell me about the day your dad brought you here?" I told her everything. The quick hug that felt more like a handshake. The promise about Sunday that he probably forgot before he finished saying it. The way he didn't look back when he drove away, like he was already somewhere else in his mind. The duffel bag with 3 days of clothes, the toothbrush, the charger he was supposed to bring and never did. And since then? She asked. Nothing, I said, the word heavier than I expected. He texted once, on day 8, just said hang tight buddy with a thumbs up emoji. That was it. No phone calls, no emails, nothing. She wrote something down. Has he sent money? Called your grandmother? Made any arrangements for your care? I looked at Grandma. Her jaw was tight, the way it got when she was trying not to say something she'd regret. He sent $200 the first week, Grandma said, her voice measured and careful. Nothing since. I've been covering everything. Food, clothes, school supplies, a winter jacket because he didn't pack one. Jordan's been enrolled in the local middle school because we didn't know how long. She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. How long he would be gone. How long this would last. How long before temporary became permanent. Miss Patterson nodded slowly. Mrs. Chen, you've done an incredible job stepping up under these circumstances. But I want you both to understand that what your son has done, leaving a minor without proper arrangements, without communication, without financial support for this length of time, that's not just irresponsible, it's legally considered abandonment. The word hung in the air like smoke from a fire nobody wanted to name. Abandonment. I had thought it, written it in my notebook in capital letters late at night, whispered it to myself in the dark when I couldn't sleep. But hearing someone official say it out loud, someone in a gray blazer with a clipboard, made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. What happens now? I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. Now, Miss Patterson said, meeting my eyes directly, we try to locate your father. We document everything that's happened, and we make sure you're protected, no matter what he decides to do. You shouldn't have to wait around wondering if he'll remember he has a son. That's not how this works. Over the next few weeks, Grandma and I built a case without calling it that. We printed my dad's phone records showing how many calls he had ignored. We saved every text, including the one thumbs up that was supposed to pass for parenting. We kept receipts from everything Grandma bought me, clothes, notebooks, a new backpack when mine fell apart, groceries, medicine when I got sick. Miss Patterson visited every week. She brought forms and asked questions, and always made sure to talk to me alone for a few minutes, checking that I felt safe and heard. You're doing something important, she told me once. You're telling your story in a way that can't be ignored. That takes courage. I didn't feel courageous, I felt tired. But I also felt something else, something that had been building since the first week. I felt angry, not the explosive kind of angry that makes you throw things. The slow, steady kind that sits in your chest and waits, the kind that turns into fuel. I started recording videos on my phone, like a diary, but with my face attached. Day 45, I said into the camera, sitting on the guest bed that now had my posters on the walls. Still nothing from Dad. Grandma enrolled me in summer reading program at the library. She says it'll help me make friends. I don't know how to tell her that making friends feels pointless when I don't know if I'll even be here next month. I saved every video. Time-stamped. Dated. Evidence. If my dad ever showed up with excuses and apologies, I wanted him to see exactly what his silence looked like from my side. The breaking point came on day 67. I was at the library returning books when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hey buddy, sorry it's been a while. Things got complicated. I'll explain everything soon. Love you. No name. No return address. No indication of when soon might actually arrive. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I screenshot the message and added it to my folder. That night I showed Grandma. He's alive, she said, relief and anger fighting for space in her voice. At least we know he's alive. He's not coming back, I said quietly. Is he? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The next day, Ms. Patterson filed a formal report. The state began proceedings to establish temporary guardianship with Grandma. My dad was sent official notifications, legal letters that required responses, deadlines that carried consequences. He ignored all of them. Week 10 was when I stopped being sad and started being strategic. Grandma and I sat down with Miss Patterson and her supervisor to talk about what came next. They explained that my dad's continued absence, his failure to respond to legal notices, his lack of financial support, all of it added up to a clear case of abandonment. The court will likely grant your grandmother temporary custody, the supervisor said. And, depending on how your father responds or doesn't respond, that could become permanent. Permanent. The word felt heavy and light at the same time. What about child support? Grandma asked. I'm on a fixed income. I love Jordan more than anything, but this isn't sustainable. If custody is transferred, we can pursue child support through the courts, Ms. Patterson explained. His wages can be garnished, his tax returns intercepted. There are consequences for abandoning your financial responsibilities to a child. I thought about my dad's apartment, the one he was so proud of. The new TV, the leather couch, the gaming system he bought for our weekends together. Weekends that had stopped happening months before he dropped me here. Good, I said. Everyone looked at me. I want him to feel it. I want him to understand that leaving me wasn't free. Grandma squeezed my hand. Jordan? No, I said, my voice steady. He always told me actions have consequences. He said if I made bad choices, I'd have to live with them. Well, he made a choice. Now it's his turn. Miss Patterson nodded slowly. You have every right to feel that way, and the system is designed to hold parents accountable even when they don't want to be. On day 87, Grandma got a call. I was in my room doing homework when I heard her voice rise, sharp and incredulous. You have got to be kidding me. After 3 months? 3 months, Michael. I crept to the doorway and listened. No, you cannot just pick him up like he's a package you forgot at the post office. There are legal proceedings now. There are people involved. You did this. You made this happen. A pause. Then, quieter but still fierce. He's not the same kid you left here. He's been through things no 12-year-old should have to process. If you want to see him, you're going to have to go through the proper channels. And frankly, after everything, I'm not sure he wants to see you at all. She hung up. I heard her take a shaky breath. I stepped into the hallway. Was that Dad? She turned, eyes red. Yes. He says he wants to come get you, says he's sorted everything out, and he's ready to be a father again. Ready to be a father, I repeated, like it's a job he can just clock back into. Jordan, I told him it's not that simple anymore. There's a hearing scheduled. He'll have to explain himself to a judge. Something in my chest loosened, not because I was happy exactly, but because for the first time, someone was making him answer for what he did. Good, I said again. I want to be there. I want to see his face when he has to explain why 3 months of silence was supposed to be okay. The hearing was scheduled for day 94. I woke up that morning feeling like I was about to take the biggest test of my life. The kind where everything depends on the next few hours, and there's no way to study, no way to prepare, no way to know if you're ready until you're already in the middle of it. Grandma made pancakes, my favorite, with extra butter and real maple syrup. But neither of us ate much. The pancakes sat on our plates getting cold, while we got dressed in nice clothes and tried to pretend this was a normal day. The drive to the courthouse was quiet. Grandma hummed along to the radio, something soft and old that I didn't recognize. I stared out the window at the houses passing by, wondering if the kids inside them had fathers who showed up, who stayed, who didn't treat parenting like a chore they could skip when it got inconvenient. The building was bigger than I expected. All marble floors and high ceilings, and people in suits rushing everywhere like they had somewhere important to be. The sound echoed. Footsteps and conversations and the mechanical hum of elevators opening and closing. Miss Patterson met us at the entrance and walked us through what would happen. Her voice was calm and reassuring, the way teachers sound when they're trying to make a hard thing feel manageable. The judge will ask questions, she said. Your father will have a chance to explain his side. You might be asked to speak, Jordan. Only if you feel comfortable. No one's going to force you. I nodded. I had been preparing for this without knowing it. Every notebook entry was practice. Every video was a rehearsal. Every sleepless night spent staring at the ceiling, imagining what I would say if I ever got the chance. All of it was leading to this room. I want to speak, I said. I want him to hear it from me. We entered a small courtroom. It wasn't like the ones on TV, all dramatic lighting and packed galleries. This one was plain, almost boring. Fluorescent lights, beige walls. A judge's bench that looked more like a teacher's desk than a throne of justice. Grandma sat beside me on a wooden bench, her hand clasped tight around mine. Miss Patterson and her supervisor sat at a table nearby with their folders and documents. A woman I didn't recognize sat at another table, shuffling papers and checking her phone. Then the door opened, and my dad walked in. He looked different, thinner, definitely. Tired in a way I hadn't seen before, like the weight of something was pressing down on him. He was wearing a suit I had never seen before, dark and stiff, like he had bought it just for this occasion, and hadn't had time to break it in. His eyes found me immediately, scanning the room until they landed on my face. Something flickered across his expression. Guilt, maybe? Or regret? Or just the discomfort of being somewhere he couldn't talk his way out of. "Jordan," he said, moving toward me, arms half raised like he expected a hug. Miss Patterson stepped between us smoothly, professionally. "Mr. Chen, please take your seat. You'll have a chance to speak during the proceedings." He hesitated, his arms falling back to his sides. Then he nodded and walked to the other table. The woman with him, his lawyer I guessed, leaned over and whispered something. He nodded again, his jaw tight. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then we sat, and the hearing began. The first part was all legal language. Dates, documents, official notices that had been sent and returned unopened. Miss Patterson presented the timeline in careful detail, each day marked and documented, each failure to respond noted in the record. My dad's lawyer tried to explain that he had been dealing with personal matters and didn't realize the severity of the situation. She used words like miscommunication and temporary circumstances and good intentions. The judge's expression didn't change. She had probably heard these excuses 100 times before. "Mr. Chen," she said, cutting through the lawyer's explanations, "you left your 12-year-old son with your mother for what you described as a weekend trip. That was 94 days ago. You responded to exactly one legal notice, and only after repeated attempts and a formal warning of court action. Can you explain why?" My dad cleared his throat. His hands were folded on the table in front of him, and I could see his knuckles turning white. "Your Honor, I was going through a difficult time. My job was unstable. My living situation was uncertain. I had some personal issues I needed to address. I thought Jordan would be better off with his grandmother temporarily while I got back on my feet. I didn't realize how long it would take." "Did you communicate this plan to your mother?" Not in detail. No, I thought she understood." "Did you provide financial support during this time?" "I sent money at the beginning, when I could." $200, the judge said, glancing at a document in front of her. "Once, in 94 days, while your mother covered all expenses for housing, food, clothing, medical care, and school enrollment for your son." My dad's face reddened. "I intended to send more. Things were tight. I was between jobs for a while." The judge turned to Miss Patterson. "What is the state's position?" Patterson stood, her voice clear and steady. "Your Honor, based on our investigation, Mr. Chen abandoned his parental responsibilities. He left his son without adequate preparation, communication, or support. He failed to respond to multiple attempts at contact from both his mother and this department. Mrs. Chen, the grandmother, has been serving as the de facto guardian for 3 months, covering all expenses and providing all emotional support without any assistance from the child's father." She paused, letting the words settle. "Jordan has also been documenting his experience throughout this period, written records and video testimony. With the court's permission, we would like to enter these as evidence." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Watching my videos play on a courtroom screen was surreal. There was my face, tired and small, filling up the monitor. My voice sounded younger than I remembered, more fragile. The camera showed Grandma's house, the room that had become mine by default, the calendar on the wall where I had crossed off every single day with red marker. "Day 21, my recorded voice said. "Grandma cried in the bathroom today. She thinks I didn't hear, but I did. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make this better." I heard my dad inhale sharply. From the corner of my eye, I saw him grip the edge of the table. Day 45. Still nothing from Dad. Started at a new school today. Had to explain to the counselor why my emergency contact is my grandma instead of a parent. She looked at me like something was wrong with me. Maybe something is. The video shifted to show the kitchen. Grandma's refrigerator with my school papers stuck to it with magnets, the empty chair at the table where no one sat. Day 67. He texted from an unknown number. Sorry it's been a while. Things got complicated. That's all he said. 94 days of silence. 94 days of wondering if he was dead or just done with me, and all I got was 6 words and a thumbs up emoji. The final clip showed my face again. Older somehow. Eyes that had seen too much. I used to think if I was good enough, smart enough, quiet enough, he would come back. I don't think that anymore. This is his choice, and I'm choosing to remember everything. When the videos ended, the courtroom was heavy with silence. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. The judge looked at me. Jordan, would you like to say anything directly to the court? I stood up, my legs shaking but my voice steady. I had practiced this in my head 1,000 times. But standing there, looking at my father across the room, the words came out different. Realer. You always told me that actions have consequences, I said, my eyes locked on his. You said if I made a bad choice, I had to face what came next. I heard that my whole life. Every time I forgot my homework, every time I left dishes in the sink. You made sure I knew. I took a breath. Well, you made a choice. You chose to leave me. You chose to stop calling. You chose to send 1 text in 3 months and think that was enough. You chose to let Grandma carry everything, the money, the worry, the explanations to teachers and neighbors, while you sorted things out. My voice cracked, but I kept going. I'm not saying this because I hate you. I'm saying this because you taught me that words don't matter if your actions don't match. And your actions told me exactly where I stand. Your actions told me I wasn't worth coming back for. I sat back down. Grandma was crying openly now. My dad's head was bowed, his shoulders shaking. The judge took a long moment before speaking. Mr. Chen, the evidence presented today shows a pattern of neglect that goes beyond a difficult period. Leaving a child without proper arrangements for 94 days, providing virtually no financial support, and failing to respond to legal notices demonstrates a serious failure in parental responsibility. She continued, I am granting temporary custody to Mrs. Margaret Chen, the child's grandmother. Mr. Chen, you will be required to complete a parenting course and undergo a psychological evaluation before any unsupervised visitation is considered. You will also be ordered to pay child support, retroactive to the date of abandonment. Failure to comply will result in further legal action. My dad's lawyer whispered something to him. He nodded numbly. Additionally, the judge said, based on the duration and nature of this abandonment, I am referring this case for review regarding potential permanent custody transfer. A follow-up hearing will be scheduled in 90 days. She looked at me. Jordan, you showed remarkable courage in documenting your experience and speaking today. No child should have to advocate for themselves this way, but you did it with dignity. The court commends you. She struck her gavel. Court is adjourned. After the hearing, my dad tried to approach me in the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. People in suits walked past, absorbed in their own cases, their own dramas. For them, this was just another Tuesday. For me, it was the day everything changed. Jordan, wait, please. His voice cracked. I know I messed up. I know I should have called, should have been there, but I'm here now. I want to make this right. I stopped walking. Grandma's hand tightened on my shoulder, protective, ready to pull me away if I needed her to. I turned to face him. Really looked at him for the first time since he walked into that courtroom. He seemed smaller somehow. The suit that was supposed to make him look responsible just made him look like a kid playing dress-up. His eyes were red. His hands were shaking. Part of me wanted to run to him, to pretend the last 3 months hadn't happened. To go back to being the kid who believed his dad when he said, just for the weekend. But that kid had been writing in a notebook for 94 days. That kid had learned what it felt like to be forgotten. That kid had stopped believing in promises that came with smiles and left with silence. I looked at him, really looked, trying to find the dad who taught me to ride a bike, who made pancakes on Saturday mornings, who used to be someone I trusted. You're here because a judge made you come, I said. You're here because you ran out of options, not because you chose me. That's not true. I love you, I always have. Then why didn't you answer when I called? Why didn't you text back when I asked where you were? Why did Grandma have to cry in the bathroom because she didn't know how to explain why my own father didn't want me? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I'm not saying I'll never forgive you, I said quietly. But right now, I need you to understand something. You didn't just leave me for 3 months. You left me wondering if I was worth coming back for. And that doesn't go away because you show up with a suit and an apology. I turned and walked back to Grandma. She put her arm around me, and we left the courthouse together. That was 6 months ago. I'm still living with Grandma. The guest room is officially my room now, with posters on the walls and books on the shelves, and a desk where I do my homework every night. The temporary custody became permanent after my dad missed 2 court-ordered parenting sessions and was late on 3 child support payments. The state garnished his wages. He had to sell the leather couch, the gaming system, even the TV he was so proud of. I know this because he complained about it during one of our supervised visits. He said it wasn't fair, that the system was designed to punish fathers, that he was trying his best. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him and thought about all the nights I lay awake, wondering if he was okay. If something had happened to him. If the reason he wasn't calling was because he couldn't, not because he chose not to. He has supervised visits now, twice a month, at a center downtown with social workers present. The room has plastic chairs and motivational posters on the walls, and a clock that ticks too loud. The first few visits were awkward. Lots of silence, lots of him trying to make jokes that didn't land, lots of me staring at my hands and wondering what we were supposed to talk about. But slowly, something has started to shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, not trust, maybe not ever. But something smaller. A willingness to sit in the same room without wanting to leave. A curiosity about whether he's actually changing or just performing change for the social workers. He shows up on time now. He asks about school, about my friends, about the books I'm reading. He doesn't make excuses anymore, or at least not as many. Last visit, he said something that actually stuck with me. I know I can't fix what I did by talking about it, he said, his hands folded on the plastic table. I know words don't mean much after everything. I just want you to know that I'm trying. For the first time in a long time, I'm actually trying. I didn't say anything back. But I didn't walk away either. Grandma says healing isn't linear. Some days I'm fine, laughing with friends at school, acing tests, feeling like a normal kid with a normal life. Other days I find myself staring at my phone, still half expecting a text that says, "Hang tight, buddy," and nothing else. On those days, I open my notebook. I read through the entries from those 94 days. The fear, the anger, the loneliness that felt like drowning. And I remind myself that I survived, that I documented, that I refused to let my story be erased or rewritten by someone who wasn't there to see it. Here's what I learned from being left behind. Parents don't get to disappear and then reappear like nothing happened. You can't take a 3-month vacation from being someone's father and then walk back in expecting a hug. Love isn't a switch you can flip on and off when it's convenient. It's not a subscription you can pause and resume when your life gets easier. If someone tells you that you should be grateful just because they came back, remember this. Coming back isn't the same as staying. Showing up for a hearing because a judge ordered you to isn't the same as showing up every day because you want to. Apologizing isn't the same as changing. You are allowed to be angry. That anger isn't weakness or bitterness or proof that you're unforgiving. It's proof that you know you deserved better. It's proof that you have standards for how people should treat you. You are allowed to document. Write it down. Record it. Save every text and every email and every piece of evidence that proves what happened. Not because you want revenge, but because the truth is the only thing that can't be twisted. The truth is your protection against people who want to rewrite history to make themselves look better. You are allowed to tell your story, even when it makes people uncomfortable. Even when they say you should move on, or forgive and forget, or stop living in the past. Your story is yours. Your pain is yours. Nobody else gets to decide when you're done carrying it. and you are allowed to decide what forgiveness looks like. On your own timeline, in your own way. Maybe forgiveness means letting go of the anger so it doesn't poison you. Maybe it means giving someone another chance because they've proven they deserve it. Maybe it means accepting what happened without pretending it was okay. Or maybe forgiveness isn't even the goal. Maybe the goal is just peace. Peace with your past. Peace with the people who failed you. Peace with the version of yourself who had to grow up too fast because the adults in your life couldn't be bothered to stay. My dad dropped me off for the weekend and disappeared for 3 months. When he finally came back, he found a son who had stopped waiting and started writing. He found a grandmother who had stepped up when he stepped out. He found a courtroom full of evidence he couldn't explain away, couldn't charm his way out of, couldn't minimize with jokes and excuses. He found consequences he never expected. Real ones. The kind that follow you around, that show up in your paycheck and your calendar and the plastic chairs of a supervised visitation center. And when he whispered, "This wasn't supposed to happen like this," I knew exactly what to say. No. It wasn't supposed to happen at all. You were supposed to come back on Sunday. You were supposed to answer when I called. You were supposed to be my dad, but you made your choice. And this is mine. So let me ask you. If someone who was supposed to protect you chose to walk away, would you wait forever for them to come back? Would you keep the door open and the light on and your heart ready to break again? Would you pretend the silence never happened, the empty days, the unanswered calls, the way they made you feel like you weren't worth staying for? Or would you do what I did? Write it down, record it, build a case file out of your own pain. Make sure the truth becomes the one thing they cannot escape, cannot deny, cannot explain away with a smile and a sorry. I made my choice. I chose to stop being invisible. I chose to stop waiting for someone who wasn't coming. I chose to make my voice louder than his absence. And for the first time in my life, I'm the one deciding what comes next. Not him. Me.